Greetings, everyone. Well, it's kind of a gray, cloudy morning here, but there's no rain. I'm hiding from the wind, hopefully keep the microphone quiet. I had some thoughts this morning. I was sitting around there in the dark with a cup of coffee, waiting for the sun to rise. And I started thinking back across my life as to certain events, certain moments in life where I had people that I knew and people that I trusted come to me and tell me something. It started off in the positive, that they would tell me that, boy, you're really good at that, or boy, you should put in time on that, you showing promise there, and I've had people, whether they were my teachers and mentors or whether just close friends, people I worked with in the band and things like this, who really only sometimes had to say something to me just once. The example that came to mind was about playing slide guitar. When I was a teen, I actually picked up on this. A guy handed me a Ernie Ball finger slide, and I started messing around with it. And while I certainly appreciated a lot of the slide guitar players I heard in Chicago at the time, guys who'd come up from the Delta, and I liked that sound, but I didn't figure I was very good at it. But I kept playing with the thing, and I just kept working with it. I never took it on stage or anything like that. I didn't feel confident and quality enough to use it that way. But then one day, a friend of mine who had been a bass player in my band for many years, he just turned to me one day and he said, you're really good with that thing. And I said, oh, John, no, not really. I just mess around, He said, no, take it for real. You got a knack with that slide. Well, I trusted John. We'd worked together for years in music, and so he was a good friend of mine, and so I went ahead and I took it to heart. I said, well, I don't know, I don't really feel that much confidence, but if John says I've got something here, I guess I'll pursue it. And I did, and over time, I ended up developing neuropathy in the hands. Sometimes it was so bad because I was working, as a mechanic, a farmer, truck drivers and things, and none of this stuff is good for guitarists. And anyway, I found that the slide became very important to me at one point because my fingers just didn't work the way they used to when I was 25, and so it was a savior. I can still play the guitar despite the fact that I can't feel half of my hands and fingers sometimes. The nerves are pretty broken down from just too much work and abuse. But I thought about that this morning, and then I thought back across the visual arts that I had been doing as a young man too, and I had two art teachers when I was in school. I kind of specialized in visual arts. I did various different things, from ceramics to I made ceramic murals that ended up probably still be on the student lounge wall at my high school. If it hadn't been, they demolished the high school, and it's been gone for years. I did a lot of pen and ink. Eventually I moved into acrylics, like oil type paintings, doing paintings. And I remember my gym teacher, the school track coach, he just had to buy the two paintings I had done with, it was back in the days of maxi and mini skirts and dresses. And so I had a pair of beautiful ladies strolling down a sidewalk, walking at you in the maxis, and then walking away from you, another painting that had the ladies in the minis, and he saw that, and he just had to have that thing. and he bought it from me. The school bought most of my ceramics from me and displayed them when I was, in school. And both of my teachers said, "Bill, you're really good at this. You should go on to art." Well, they offered me scholarships, and at the time I was too deep into music, and I didn't feel like drawing Coke bottles and whatever. I never pursued it, but I did take what people said to me to heart, because I continued visual arts, including pen and ink cartooning, and on into eventually watercolor still lifes and stuff, even well into my 40s. Yeah, I kept it up. I have given it up completely these days, only because I don't have time for it. It just doesn't fit into my life very well. There's only so much creative activity that some of us can do if we're not Michelangelo or Leonardo da Vinci or somebody. I'm not exactly the Renaissance man here. But again, the encouragement from my mentors at the time, it was move me on. And the reverse is true too. When you think about that, especially when it's from someone you care about and someone you love, when it's just some random bozo on the internet chiming in on your Facebook page, being a dork, it's painful sometimes, but, what's he know? But when it comes from somebody you know well, it can be pretty destructive. I remember a guy I worked with in music years ago, and when I was still a teen, who turned to me one day and told me, "Man, you got no sense of rhythm and you're tone deaf." Well, it didn't stop me from playing music, but it did stop me from singing again. I had sung throughout my whole childhood, mostly in the church and stuff, and then in the car, driving around with Mom, whatever, we sang. But at that point in my teens, I stopped. I corked myself right up, man. I put a sock in my mouth, and I didn't sing again until I was in my 30s. And I didn't sing in public again until I was well in my 40s and beyond. It took me a long time to get over that. And in fact, the last musical ensemble I worked with, where I did some of the singing at least, was with the guy who told me I was tone deaf. I never heard anything from him after that, but it messed with me for a long time. Yeah. There's things you do in life that you don't realize how much impact some of your actions will have on other human beings, both positive and negative. My sons used to come visit me when they were kids in the summertime. They lived with their mom in Madison, Wisconsin in the school year, but they'd come spend the summers with me, and so one of my passions in life had always been hiking and backpacking. I loved the wilderness. I spent a lot of time in it. And so I introduced my kids to it, and I used to take them backpacking in all sort of places around California. California has some pretty good stuff. We used to do Big Sur. That was fun. The North Coast was great, and all that. But yeah, so I'd take them out into the woods, and we'd do these things, and sometimes we'd hike miles and stay out there for a week or so. But they always complained. They always complained. "Oh, God, Dad, can't you slow down? Do we have to go this far?" Really, as kids. I assumed then, as they grew up, that they hated backpacking. Yeah. Well, one day the youngest guy come to me and said, "Dad, can't we go backpacking?" And I went, "What? I thought you hated it." "No." He says, "We really like it, actually." It turned out both of them, to this day, they hike, camp, backpack. They live in Wisconsin. It's a pretty good place for that sort of stuff. Yeah, so they enjoy all of that. Here I thought they hated it. And, I never did anything I could think of to to dissuade them or anything on that order. I just kept it up. When they complained about how far we were going, I'd slow down a little bit and say, "Come on, catch up and let's get going." And so, yeah, here I never knew. Mm-mm. Yeah, it was quite an epiphany the day I found that out. I used to pick mushrooms in Wisconsin a lot. In the Midwest, we picked mushrooms, and I always had abundance. There are so many mushrooms in Wisconsin, so we had plenty of them. Well, I fed them to the whole family, and it never dawned on me that the youngest guy didn't like mushrooms. He wasn't old enough to tell me, and we used to take like our food for dinner and grind it up and make his own baby food from our food. He was much happier that way. Yeah, he's the only kid who got burrito or pizza baby food. But yeah, he had nothing to say. And plus, after we ground it up for him, he didn't know what the heck was in it anyway. But years and years later, he's telling me, "Oh, Dad, I hate mushrooms." I go, "What?" "What?" Yeah. So I thought all this time I've been stuffing them in your face, and you never said anything. That kind of shocked me. But then one day, I start getting photographs from him of mushrooms. Well, I come to find out that he's decided, living there in Wisconsin, that walking in the woods is camping. He started discovering all these wonderful fungi. Next thing you know, he found out that he actually liked mushrooms after all. It's not exactly on the subject here, but that one swung both ways, and I never really did anything except, just figured, oh yeah, everybody loves mushrooms, right? I could be totally oblivious sometimes. Well, so the point, what came to mind on it is, today, the world's always been a cruel place, if it chose to be, or a kind place. It's kind of always been that way. But lately it seems that as if cruelty reigns, and that, I raised in a world where it says, lying is not good. You don't do lying, where you try to be polite to other people. The term in the scriptures was, do unto others as you wish to have them do unto you. I don't agree with a whole lot of stuff, but I'll take that one to heart. It's a right-on statement. You can't expect to get from somebody else the kind of treatment you wish to have if you won't offer it to them. That's real simple. The amount of teenage suicides today, a lot of it is associated to social media and the internet, apparently. Some of the discussions and things that go on there, it seems to destroy and crush some of the teenagers' psyches, and they'll off themselves. Your words matter. They really do. They matter a lot. We've been through a whole mess of lies, Fox News broadcasting material that they absolutely knew was not true, just because they figured it was good for profit, because the people that listened to them wanted to hear that message, But it caused a big problem, It really did. And so we see this kind of thing today. Well, in the mass social consciousness out there, the truth doesn't seem to matter very much anymore. If it's a good story, tell it, and that's that. Don't worry about what happens. Lies have a cost. They do. Somewhere along the line, whether you pay for it or someone else ends up paying for it, your thoughts are your reality, and your thoughts are your karma. Whether you believe in karma or not, most of what you do actually does tend to come back to you. And well, when you do good works and you try to help others, and generally be the best person you can, it's a pretty good chance you're not going to have to pay a price for having a whole lot of bad karma to work down. But when you walk around the world looking at everybody and having nasty thoughts about them, then that's your world. Then it does come back, and it does affect everybody around you. When Ellen is smiley in here and cheery, it's easy for me to be happy too. But man, when she gets on one of her tirades, oh boy, I want to get a shovel and dig a hole, and I'm not sure whether I should crawl in it or kick her in. Yeah, it's hard to deal with, especially from people you really care about. Yeah, when they start saying and doing things to you that hurt, it can be almost impossible to heal those wounds. They can be really deep. And it doesn't matter whether you knew the person much or not. If you're out there on your Facebook and you got people ripping at you, I get guys that tear into me on YouTube over here. It's not always tearing into. Sometimes they're just plain rude. Yeah. It's manners. That's again, I grew up in a world where we were taught that manners matter. Be polite. Yeah, even if you want to wring the guy by his throat, try being polite, because you may not have the thing straight in your mind. You might have misunderstood it. Who knows? But let's just say being calm is always a good place to start from. Once you start getting angry and spouting off, next thing everything spirals, it escalates, Just by being polite and calm, sometimes you can keep things from going into outer space on you. But yeah, it's whether you know them or not. Like I said, I get them here. They come at me sometimes. And most of the time, they're bearing simply opinions based on belief systems, and so they don't have any facts. They don't know who I am. They probably haven't even got the faintest idea what I was thinking, and often I'm quite certain that they've only made it, a minute or two into the video, caught something I said, and didn't like it, and then so just turn around and start spewing venom on the comments. Most of you folks who are around here frequently, you don't get to see this because, we remove them. Yeah, I get people start that kind of stuff. They don't get a chance to participate here. And so there's your basic thing, when you're polite in a social setting, well, you get a chance to participate. When you're not, well, they throw you out. I'm working with the government before in hearings, let's face it, Bill's no technical expert. I'm not a lawyer, or any of these things. But when I get involved in these hearings with the government, mostly it was over mining, usually, in Wisconsin and the Midwest. The most powerful thing I have is the ability to slow things down and make them annoying. Yeah, this is what I do well. And I did, and there's always a line. The hearing examiners will let me know, don't step over the line, Mr. Merrill, you'll be out of here, And you gotta hold it back right behind the wall, just enough to let them know you're there. But yeah, there are limits. It's limits. And, even on social media, there really should be limits. They don't seem that there are a lot of them. Seem to somehow, I guess the social media thing, it must have to do a lot with the fact that there's a disconnect. When I'm talking to a person face to face, I can see what they're feeling, if they're crying or laughing, I know it. When you're on the other end of a computer someplace and you slam something in there on somebody, you don't see what happened. Yeah, it's a disconnect, I believe, is why people don't seem to have much for manners. A lot of people don't seem to have much for manners. And, we take our lead from, like the horrid orange guy. The only thing he ever does is insult everybody around him and blame them. Hey, take the lead from the ex-president, right? This is how you act in public. I never raped her. Whatever. She's lying. Yeah, everybody's a liar. Everybody's wrong. That kind of stuff. It behooves us frequently to admit our shortcomings. Yeah, it does us good. A lot of us, at least, need to get beat down a peg or two as far as what we think about ourselves and how important we figure we are, Yeah, that's usually our own opinions of ourselves are a little bit inflated, mostly. At least in my case, that happens. I try not to do that, but it does happen. Anyway, what you say matters, folks. Take it to heart, really. I would just love to see people on the internet, people in social media, suddenly turn around and start acting a little more polite, realizing that we're all in the same boat over here together, rowing along, You start shooting at everybody else. Holy smoke. It doesn't do any good. You'll pay a price. You pay a price for your actions and your words eventually, somehow. Hang loose, folks. Aloha.